you, Amy. It is so great to be here. I think this is my fourth Sun Valley Forum. I get invited to a lot of conferences all over the world, as many of the speakers here do, and this is one that I never want to miss because it's such a great mix of people from different aspects of this world, people involved in tech and in finance and in science and all of that. So you're going to hear a lot of great talks in the next few days, a lot of great graphics. This talk is not going to be one of them. My talk is going to be is very low key and old fashioned. I want to read to you a short segment from my new book, The Heat Will Kill You First, which is coming out on July 11th. It's my 7th book. It's a book about the risks and implications of extreme heat, a subject that I know a little bit about, not just because I spent 3.5 years working on this book, but because I just came from Austin, Texas, where it was 107 degrees. And I got some texts this morning from scientist friends who say that the ocean temperature on the planet right now is higher than has ever been measured by scientists since they've been measuring the ocean temperature. You all know about heat waves and everything. And my book is about that. And despite the sort of stark title of the book, it's a book that's full of stories about people who are doing amazing work to fight the effects of heat and build a better world. And in fact, as soon as I finish, you're going to hear from one of them, Kathy Bachman-McLeod, who's going to come out and talk about the work that she and Arsh Rock is doing on this. But in this excerpt I'm going to read, I don't really talk about solutions. I talk about the scope of the problem. I chose this excerpt because before we talk about activism and finance and solutions, I think it's important to remember and really to underscore the scale and urgency of what we face. And I don't consider what I'm writing about or what you will hear to be anything like doomerism. I feel like it is something more like a reality check. So I'm going to be Mr. Rogers now and sit down here. And I don't have a sort of Mr. Rogers-y sweater, but I'll do my best to tell you a story about heat. And this is from the opening chapter of my book. You probably think of heat on a temperature scale, either Fahrenheit or Celsius. You think of it as a gradual, linear thing, a quality of the air around you that moves up and down in increments, or that can be controlled by a thermostat. 70 degrees is a little hotter than 68 degrees, which is a little hotter than 65 degrees. The change of seasons also play into this incremental perception of heat. Winter gradually warms into spring, spring into summer. Yes, there are some days that are noticeably hotter or colder than others, but we crank up the air conditioning and throw on a sweater. We trust it will pass and things will return to normal. Temperature is a merry-go-round that we're very used to riding. This sense of incrementalism also holds true with the climate crisis. The Earth is getting hotter due to the burning of fossil fuels. This is a simple truth, as clear as the moon in the night sky. So far, thanks to 250 years of hell-bent fossil fuel consumption, which has filled the atmosphere with heat-trapping carbon dioxide, global temperatures have risen about 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit since the industrial era and are on track to warm by about 6 degrees Fahrenheit or more by the end of the century. The more oil, coal, and gas we burn, the hotter it's going to get. Right now, we're more than halfway to 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius of warming from pre-industrial temperatures, which scientists have long told us is the threshold for dangerous climate change. The reports of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change are full of harrowing details of what might happen to our world with 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit of warming, from collapsing ice sheets to crop-killing droughts. But to non-scientists, which is to say most humans on the planet, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit of warming does not sound dangerous at all. Who can tell the difference between a 77-degree day and an 81-degree day? Then there are the social media trolls out there who argue that extreme cold kills more people and causes all kinds of weather-related problems too. So maybe a hotter world isn't so bad after all. Even the phrase global warming sounds gentle and soothing, as if the most notable impact of burning fossil fuels will be better beach weather. The difficulty of understanding the consequences of heat is amplified by conventional notions of what it means to be hot. In pop culture, hot is sexy, hot is cool, hot is new. Websites and magazines like the one I work for, Rolling Stone, publish hot lists of the latest books and movies and TV shows and actors. Facebook started in Mark Zuckerberg's Harvard dorm as a hot or not website called Face Mash, which ranked the attractiveness of Harvard women. Heat is an expression of passion. You feel hot for the guy at the bar or engage him in a heated debate. A person who is quick to anger is hot-blooded. Near the house where I live in Austin is a gym called Heat Boot Camp. Here, sweat is purifying, a sign of inner strength, a throwback perhaps to medieval times when heat was linked to masculinity through what philosopher Thomas Aquinas called the elemental heat of the semen. In Miami, one of the hottest cities in the United States, where heat is a lethal threat to outdoor workers and where the city regularly floods due to rising seas caused by the melting of the ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica, the baseball team is named, without irony, the Miami Heat. In this book, my goal is to convince you to think about heat in a different way. The kind of heat I'm talking about here is not an incremental bump on the thermometer or the slow slide of spring into summer. It is heat as an active force, one that can bend railroad tracks and kill you before you even understand your life is at risk. Scientists don't fully understand how fast this heat can move or where it will appear next. Until it happened, a killer heat wave in the Pacific Northwest, like the one we had in 2021, seemed about as likely as snow in the Sahara. But there is one thing scientists do know. This is a form of heat that has been unleashed upon us through the burning of fossil fuels. In this sense, extreme heat is an entirely human artifact, a legacy of human civilization as real as the Great Wall of China. The amount of heat generated by our consumption of fossil fuels is difficult to grasp. By one measure, the ocean absorbs the equivalent of the heat released from 3 nuclear bombs every second. And because CO2 stays in the atmosphere for thousands of years, it's not going to cool off when we finally stop emitting CO2 into the atmosphere. All that will do is stop the increase in warming. It will not reverse it. Until we figure out how to suck massive amounts of CO2 out of the sky, we're stuck with a hotter planet. You don't need to be a Hollywood screenwriter to imagine how our world would be changed by extreme heat. A few things are self-evident. As the temperature rises, it will drive a great migration of humans, of animals, of plants, of jobs, of wealth, of diseases. They will all seek out cooler ecological niches where they can thrive. Some will fare better than others. Robins can migrate more easily than elephants. Poison ivy can move more quickly than an oak tree. Farmers who grow wheat have more options than farmers who grow peaches. And some creatures have nowhere to go. Polar bears in the Arctic can't migrate farther north. Frogs in Costa Rica aren't going to hop up to Canada. Humans are better off than many plants and animals. With the help of technology, we can adjust to a lot of things. As one architect told me, if you have enough money, you can engineer your way out of anything. And in some ways, he's right. If we can send photos through the air and drive a rover around on Mars, we can design new ways to live in hot places. You can see it happening right now in Paris and Los Angeles and many other cities around the world, where shade trees are being planted and streets painted white to deflect sunlight. Plant geneticists are developing new strains of corn and wheat and soybeans that can better tolerate high temperatures. Air conditioning is becoming cheaper and more widely used. Communication from public health officials about how to protect yourself during a heat wave is improving. Clothing companies are developing new high-tech fabrics to reflect away sunlight and dissipate heat more quickly. But even for the wealthy and privileged, adaptation to extreme heat has its limits. And the notion that 8 billion people are going to thrive on a hotter planet by simply cranking up the air conditioning or seeking refuge under a pine tree is a profound misunderstanding of the future we're creating for ourselves. In Western Pakistan, where only the richest of the rich have air conditioning, it's already too hot for humans several weeks a year. In India, I talk with families who live in concrete slums that are so hot that they burn their hands when they go to open a door. Holy cities like Mecca and Jerusalem, where millions gather on religious pilgrimages, are cauldrons of sweat. Earth's history is full of wild temperature swings driven by volcanic eruptions, meteor strikes, and geologic mayhem. There have been palm trees in the Arctic and 2,000 feet of ice over New York City. But for the last 3 million years or so, while humans evolved, the climate has been relatively stable. Stable enough anyway that our ancestors could migrate, adapt, and thrive. But those days may be over. The last time the Earth was hotter than it is today was at least 125,000 years ago, long before anything that resembled human civilization appeared. Since 1970, the Earth's temperature has spiked faster than in any comparable 40-year period in recorded history. The 8 years between 2015 and 2022 were the hottest on record, and I should say that 2023 is looking like it will be the hottest ever recorded. In 2022, 850 million people lived in regions that experienced all-time high temperatures. Globally, killer heat waves are becoming longer, hotter, and more frequent. One recent study found that a heat wave like the one that cooked the Pacific Northwest in 2021 is 150 times more likely today than it was before we began filling the atmosphere with CO2 at the beginning of the industrial age. The ocean, which hundreds of millions of people depend on for their food supply and which has been a big influence on weather, was the hottest ever recorded in 2022. And I should add, it's hotter now this year than it was last year in 2022. Even Antarctica, the coldest place on Earth, is not immune. In March of 2022, a heat wave invaded the icebound continent, pushing temperatures 70 degrees above normal. Extreme heat is remaking our planet into one in which large swaths may become inhospitable to human life. One recent study projected that over the next 50 years, 1 to 3 billion people will be left outside the climate conditions that gave rise to civilization over the last 6,000 years. Even if we transition fairly quickly to clean energy, half the world's population will be exposed to life-threatening combinations of heat and humidity by 2100. Temperatures in parts of the world could rise so high that just stepping outside for a few hours, another study warned, will result in death for even the fittest humans. Life on Earth is like a finely calibrated machine, one that has been built by evolution to work very well within its design parameters. Heat breaks that machine in fundamental ways, disrupting how cells function, how proteins unfold, how molecules move. Yes, some organisms can thrive in higher temperatures than others. Roadrunners do better than blue jays. Silver Saharan ants can run across super hot desert sands that would kill other insects instantly. Microbes live in 170-degree hot springs in Yellowstone National Park. A 30-year-old triathlete can handle a 110-degree day better than a 70-year-old man with heart disease. And yes, we humans are remarkable creatures with a tremendous capacity to adapt and adjust to a rapidly changing world. But extreme heat is a force beyond anything we have reckoned with before. It may be a human creation, but it is godlike in its power and its prophecy. Because all living things share one simple fate. If the temperature they're used to, what scientists sometimes call their Goldilocks zone, rises too far too fast, they die. Thank you.